We're going to get started. The time being 10:25. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the CARES Act Allocation Committee for Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021. I am Committee Chair Jarrett Sanchez. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Perez,
Here.
Kenyon,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Molina,
Molina present.
Shepro,
Shepro present.
Surges,
Oh, no,
Where'd he go?
we can't do it without him.
Sanchez.
He's on. All right, he just got on
Put the
mute.
sergeant on a seat to compel the attendance of Mr.
Okay, if I could please have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of January 27th, 2021. Mr. Kenyon moves, Mr. Frost seconds. Any questions, comments, additions, deletions? Hearing and seeing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Perez,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes,
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Shepro,
Shepro, yes.
Surges,
Okay. Do we have anyone here for public comment? I don't see anyone in the audience. I'm not aware of anyone online here for public comment. If so, speak now. I see a few names that I don't recognize, but okay, we'll move on. Here we have a discussion item, a status of the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Mr. Onzik, do you have anything on this at this time?
I really don't have very much to say other than we've been working very hard in order to close the year. So we're talking about fiscal year 2020 and making sure that every penny of expense that was eligible for reimbursement was covered. And so we have those journal entries in terms of expenses finalized now and has been recorded. So it has taken a very long time to get through all that, but that much is done. Within the next month, I believe we should be working on getting caught up with the months since November. So we're talking about December, January, February months in terms of reviewing those expenses. There'll be fewer because we had originally expected to utilize those funds by December 31st. So we should be getting towards the end of that. But we want to also make sure that every penny is accounted for there. And what I'm talking about is the funds that were allocated to the county itself. So we're still in the process of working through that. The final payroll reimbursement for fiscal year 2020 has not been recorded yet. We have it estimated, but we've been working through issues with the payroll reports. It's just more technical issues in getting at the information. And because it is the end of the year, I just want to make sure it is absolutely perfect. So that's been taking longer than anticipated. But within the next few days, that should be completed as well. And then we'll have a final figure of the payroll reimbursement for fiscal year 2020 for audit purposes and well as reporting purposes for you. And I believe then the next report to the federal government is due in, I think, the 10th of April or thereabouts. So we'll have to be fairly caught up by then for that reason as well. But that's where it stands in terms of the accounting side of things for us right now.
Thank you, Mr. Onzik. And you and your department have been working really hard for us in this past year since we've started handling this money. I know it was an extra burden on you all, so I really appreciate all the work you're doing. I'm not going to say no rush on any of that because I don't want, then you're going to think, oh, how am I going to not rush? I have to get this done now. And I don't want you to think we're in a hurry though either. So
I
do what
appreciate
you're doing. You're doing a good job. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful team effort. So thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Onzik before we move on? Okay. So the majority of this is going to cover the emergency rental assistance program and some related topics. Before we go on to that, Fabiola, do you have anything you would like to share with the committee at this time? Or Michelle? Michelle's here in person, but I saw Fabiola was online.
Fabiola will be addressing the status.
Fabiola, are you there? Might have some.
Possible it might not be working and it's not muted.
Okay. Okay, she said her sound is not working, so we'll just we'll clear up this. Did you try smoke signals? No. Okay, she's gonna try another headset. I think.
Semaphore.
Do you know semaphore? You can get the
Yeah,
flags out,
yeah.
Ken. That'd be great. There's some good marketing piece for us. Yes, yeah. So we'll just give it another moment. So once we get into the new business portion of the meeting, it's going to occupy our attention and time.
Chairman Sanchez, this is Scott Berger. If you'd like, I can go ahead and give you a briefing on the OCR managed programs while we're waiting for Fabiola.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, so last night we did share with you an Excel document which captures the status of the CRF programs managed by my office. If you have that open, Mr. Peters, if you've got that open on the screen, that would be helpful. But the members may have that document open on their own devices. I would call your attention to the second tab, which is the Cultural Institutions Grant Program. That tab tabulates for you the awards that have been made under the Historical Society and History Museum category, as well as the category including performing and visual arts venues, as well as amusement venues. You can see that we have dispersed $62,900+ to the first category, and just shy of $700,000 to the second category. That does fall short of the amount that you have allocated. And per county board resolution, my office, in consultation with Chairman Sanchez, has transferred a total of $503,000 plus from that category over to the business category. You'll recall that the board authorized that unused funds in this cultural category should be reallocated for use with businesses. So we've done that. And if you look at the first tab of the report, you'll find a very long list of applicants that have businesses that have sought funding under your Coronavirus Relief Fund Business Grant Program Round 2. You'll recall there was a cap of $25,000 per business established, and we did serve those businesses in the order in which they applied and were deemed eligible. So this report is vastly different than the last one we gave you. You'll notice in the status category, there are quite a lot of paid in fulls referenced there under the status. So we're, my office, my staff have been, they've been doing a Herculean job of processing these applications and pushing funds out the door. Our last disbursement was last week. I believe it was Thursday, the funds went out. We're doing this approximately every 2 weeks. If you scroll to the very bottom of that tab of the spreadsheet, you'll find a summary of the status of the funding. So with the $5 million initial allocation, along with the $1.4+ million supplemental funds that you allocated for this program, we have a total of $6.4 million that have initially been allocated. We've transferred over the $503,000 from the cultural program for a total amount of just over $7 million. To date, we have expended just shy of $6 million in this program, and we have a balance available of just over $1 million. So our staff will continue to process the applications, working through the queue until the funds are exhausted. We think that will occur probably within the next 30 days or so. That concludes my report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Frost, go ahead.
Frost speaking. First of all, Scott, I just want to thank you and your staff for doing such a great job. I know over the last few months, I've had a few business grants I was following, and we had one in particular where there was a language barrier, and they worked through it with me and got it done, and I appreciate that, and the fast response to every single phone call I've given. My one question, it has to do with the performing arts area. When that whole category was devised, we were thinking in terms of the Paramount in Aurora, the Hemmons in Elgin, and the Arcada Theater in St. Charles. And I'm just wondering why the Arcata Theater did not make it onto the list.
So they did not apply. That organization did reach out to me directly, and I talked with them a couple of times. In essence, they received reimbursement for all eligible expenses under other federally funded programs. You may recall that one of the key requirements of all of this CARES Act funding is that we avoid a duplication of benefit. So obviously that means that folks can't be reimbursed twice for the same expense. We looked at this long and hard, and ultimately they said, well, you know, we've been paid for the expenses that are eligible already under other programs. We have nothing left for reimbursement. So unfortunately, they in essence didn't qualify.
Yeah, understood. Well, that, of the three, that was a private enterprise, so I understand there's a big difference there. Okay, well, thanks again for all your work, and please pass that along to your staff.
I will do that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
President,
Surges.
hold on one second, Mr. Surges. Can you just explain, Scott, some of the terms in the status column? Some are self-explanatory, but you have KEB is one, and then also following up, waiting for documents. Could you walk us through a couple of those terms?
In general, what I can tell you is that waiting for documents means that the applicant has not yet fully documented one of two things. They either have not yet documented that they've been impacted economically by the pandemic, which I'll go into some detail about that. We've been asking applicants to provide us financial records regarding their business from the pre-pandemic era, which we're considering pre-March 1st, 2020, and the pandemic era, which is since March 1st of 2020. And so we're comparing those financial records to determine one of two things. Either their revenues went down or their expenses went up. Different businesses have experienced different types of economic impacts, and we're trying to cast the net as far and wide as possible and give any consideration we can to evidence that the businesses have been affected. Not all have been. There have been some businesses that have actually done better financially since the pandemic came upon us. The second area that we're asking for documentation on is specific expenses that you identified in your resolutions as eligible for reimbursement. Those are non-payroll, but they do generally fall into the category of non-payroll operating costs. So rent, mortgage, utilities, PPE, that kind of thing are eligible. And so those expenses need to be properly documented. And so we are working with the applicants to gather that documentation. I will tell you it's easier said than done in some cases. And if you see a note that says we're waiting for something, that's generally what we're waiting for. When you see references to KEB, that generally means that we have vetted the information and the documentation that have been received. And we're kind of the first line of review in that regard, our staff. And then once we are satisfied that the documentation is legitimate and complete, we then transfer that electronically to KEB. They are your external auditing accounting firm that do the final review to make sure everything is copacetic. And then they transmit to us their determination regarding what is eligible for reimbursement and what might not be eligible for reimbursement. So that generally is what those comments mean.
Okay, so it goes until about line 361, where we start to see initial review completed, follow-up pending funds. So all the items above that say KEB, would it be safe to assume that as long as they get checked out, get the verification from KEB that there's money there for those entities at this time?
I would say as of today, March 3rd, that statement is generally true. Every 2 weeks, we're processing batches of payments, and every time we do that, the funds dwindle further. And I would say that as we move forward, it really is going to get tight in terms of whether someone can satisfy the documentation standards And we are going to be making calls on whether or not they've satisfied those standards. And if they haven't, we will be denying their applications and moving on so that we can serve other people. Obviously, as we get to the end of the funds that you've allocated for this program, we want to be very careful that we respect the queue, the order in which applications were received through our portal. And so as we get down to the wire, as it were, it may get pretty tight in terms of, whether someone can satisfy the standard or not.
Okay, well, I wanted to ask that just for the benefit of county board members, and I'll make sure the full board receives these documents we have today, because they're getting questions from, businesses in their district, and I just want everyone to know what these status terms mean, so when a business comes to them and says, okay, it says KEB, but what does that mean? Then essentially we could tell them there's a high probability that their money is coming soon.
I would say so. I would say so. I will tell you, there are some items that KEB is recommending we not reimburse. So not everything that's submitted is necessarily reimbursed. So it is important. I will tell you that our office is reaching out to all of these businesses multiple times. And I want to reassure you and the committee that your business constituents are getting more than a fair shot at satisfying the documentation standards. They're getting multiple opportunities to do so.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, because I just, again, if county board members want to answer questions to businesses, I want to make sure they're not telling them something that's inaccurate. And seeing all the ones with the KEB status, that to me signals a lot of happy business owners that are still wondering, I'm sure, what's going on with their with the grant. So thank you for that. Mr.
welcome.
Sturgis, you had a question, and I'll go to others.
I guess part of it is just a statement, and that's first off to say, Jared, thank you for acting as the clearinghouse. I think that you've done a really excellent job at not only responding, but helping us to understand exactly what the questions are that we're asking. Because just because we have a question doesn't mean it's something that Scott or Fabiola were able to answer. And your patience, although we tested them, your patience has just been so very appreciated, and I want to acknowledge that. Secondly, within the past 30 to 45 days, I've had the opportunity to speak with people from the opposite side of the coin. So when this first started 5 months ago, everybody was in line, how can we help them? I've actually had several businesses on the flip side saying, we didn't want to take any money, and we're not in favor of you pushing for this. And I thought that was an interesting. I thought it was interesting because nobody had voiced that prior, and I was just curious: was it being voiced afterwards because the listing went out of monies, and are you upset that you didn't take them, or fundamentally, were you just standing your ground saying we don't believe it was appropriate? And I just want to acknowledge that and communicate that to the committee. And then finally, there was a township request that seemed to be enormously higher than other like, kind, and quality township requests. And I'm trying to get a copy of the application for that, so that if there is another round that comes down the pipeline, we might be able to share, hey, this is what they did, don't limit yourself. And I'm struggling to get that information. How might I make that happen?
Well, I know that information was originally sent out to the committee, but at that time, the early months of the committee, we were deluged with information and documentation. So I'll make sure I pick that out of the herd. And
Jared,
send it to
please
you.
understand, please don't misinterpret. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that it wasn't originally. I no longer have it and require it, and I'm just trying to figure out how to get it.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks so much, brother. Appreciate it.
No problem. Mr. Shepro.
Yeah, a question for Mr. Berger.
if there were specific expenditures, which the auditors are now saying don't qualify, but they had other eligible expenses, are they able to essentially go back to those items to substitute for the ones that were ineligible?
Yes, through our back and forth discussions with the applicants, we're being as flexible as possible. Again, I mentioned at the last meeting, we found very few of our applicants were actually submitting complete applications initially. So pretty much all of the applicants you see in front of you have gone through some kind of back and forth and fluctuation in terms of what they've submitted and what they've sought reimbursement for.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. I've had a couple of conversations with businesses who have called me, and I'm just reflecting if we're going to be getting additional funds coming through for the federal government for our small businesses. Mr. Berger, is there any way that we could possibly make the application less onerous? I've heard repeatedly from businesses that it is very challenging for them to put together. So I'm just making a comment that perhaps we take a look at how to simplify this application process so that businesses can easily complete it and certainly satisfy any documentation you need. The second is I've also heard that the response time, I know you have been swamped, but if we're going to be addressing it next time, perhaps we need to take a look at what your staffing requirements are going to be needing, because if we have additional funding coming through, there may be a substantial opportunity to make a significant impact in our county's businesses. So let's take a look at that. And number three, the businesses that are not going to be, when funds dry out, but they may have been eligible businesses, are they going to be reviewed first when additional funding could possibly come through, or will the application process start anew?
Well, I'd answer that last question by saying that we would do our best to follow the committee's directive. As far as I know, there are no additional funds available to allocate. As you can see from the spreadsheet that we distributed, if we were to pay out all of the amounts that have been sought by the applicants, the amounts that have been applied for, we would fall about $450,000 short. So it is very likely that there are going to be some disappointed customers in that regard, unless additional funds are located. We are looking to conclude this program so that we can kind of move our attention on to other activities. But if the committee and the board do locate additional funds, we'll certainly continue to process applications as long as there are funds available.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sturgis.
Scott, based on that comment, if I'm looking at the spreadsheet all the way to the right on the applicant queue, are you suggesting that we have funding through maybe number 314 or 315, if I'm reading this right, but beyond 315, we don't have the funds? Is that what I'm interpreting or no?
I don't have an exact number, but I want to say that we're expecting, I want to say our last sort of, look in the crystal ball, was that we might be able to get to like 320, 330. But again, that will depend on, how much we disperse for those applicants that are earlier in the queue.
Okay, got it.
So you'll recall that we tackled the first, say 250 as if it didn't matter what their queue number was, because we knew there was plenty of money to satisfy all the requests in that first 250 or so. And then as we've moved forward, we're sort of taking them in smaller and smaller blocks knowing that as we get further down the list, we have to be very careful that we don't inadvertently fund or disperse funds to an applicant that came behind somebody else if they're still curing a defect in their application.
Right. I have it specifically, I have somebody in the 340 range, asking almost daily. And I'm just like, I don't think we're going to get down that far. I'm not trying to disappoint you or dissuade you. I'm just telling you there's math.
Well, I would say you're giving out accurate indicators there, because that's around the Q number where we just can't say.
Got it.
And, I got to say, I'm just thankful that we did close the application portal on December 16th when we did, because we were mindful of the fact that those folks that were filing applications into mid-December were not likely going to be funded. And so, we closed the portal, which I realize might be disappointing to those applicants that wanted to submit an application the next day. But we also were mindful of the fact that we didn't want to have a large batch of applicants that we knew would be disappointed. So we took just enough applications to go a little bit beyond where the resources would fall, and then we closed the portal.
Got it. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Berger on this item? Okay, seeing and hearing none, let's go back to Fabiola. Fabiola, were you able to get your audio equipment functioning more properly? Fabiola, are you able to talk? Yeah, I saw that there was some sound coming through before.
Star 6 possibly?
Star 6 if you're on your phone, Fabiola. To unmute. There we go.
Hello?
Ah, there you are.
All right, there we go, finally. Okay, so kind of to add on to what Scott was saying, the way this program was set up was to ensure that funds that were being dispersed to recipients met U.S. Treasury guidelines. We're not running a wish list. We're making sure that the documentation that is being provided is not been allocated by another federal resource that was available under the CARES Act or under any other Illinois program. Also, it takes an enormous amount of work behind the scenes to make sure that these funds are done properly and that there is no risk of audit problems down the road for the county. That being said, to also add to Mr. Surges' concern about the Dundee Township, we made requests of recipients for accurate expenses that were made from March through September, and then an estimation of second expenses for September through December. So those, a lot of the recipients did overestimate in what they were going to need. Some have come back and said, we don't need this money. We either got a break in the service or we just never got around to spending that money. So that's something to keep in mind as the possibility of more money becoming available comes our way. I would prefer that this program, all of the programs have come to a complete disbursement, are completely closed out so that we are now in the closeout phase. I would hate for the county to take on more money when we're still working on trying to go through whatever's left over in any of these programs. That being said, there is a screenshot of funds that are right now in the process of review. We have about 57 applications, a little over $1 million that has a completion deadline of March 19th. On March 22nd, we will start dispersing all of those final funds. At that point, we will have a number for the CAC to bring back into contingency and reallocate those monies. So at this time, I don't have anything further.
think those are even better.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Fabiola on the CRF programs that she is administering? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you very much, Fabiola. I did want to show everyone real quick. I'm going to share my screen just very briefly.
Maybe you have to have a study first.
Because people ask for these lists of all these programs and the recipients. So here, if you go to our main page, the government page, oh wait, is it on? Is it showing? Okay.
We can see it.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see it on our screen here, so. If you go to the main page, you'll see the coronavirus relief button underneath all the other coronavirus related stuff. And you'll see here the Kane County Coronavirus Relief Fund applicants, and we have all these recipient lists. So if anyone comes to you and asks where they're at, you can go here first and access these lists. I'm not sure if the one that Scott just gave us last night is on here yet, but we'll get it put up there. But otherwise, everyone will have a copy of it personally. So just so that you guys all know that this exists on our Coronavirus Relief Fund page. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. Okay. Thank you all for your questions, and thank you, Fabiola, for the update. We are going to move on now to the new business section of the meeting. And for that, I will turn it over to Mr. Berger to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, you may recall that when Congress passed the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 last December, they not only adopted a budget for federal fiscal year 2021, but they also appropriated additional funding to address the ongoing, unfortunate, lingering effects of the pandemic. And among the items that were funded in that legislation was one that was specifically aimed at providing housing assistance to lower income renter households across the country. The majority of those funds were allocated for use by the states, but a portion was made available to cities and counties that have populations of 200,000 and up. We are one of those counties, and you will recall that in January, the full board authorized an application for the county to apply for its formula allocation amount, which came in just shy of $15.8 million. At that time, you'll recall we talked with you about the concern over the lack of capacity here at the local level to stand up a program of this scale, as well as the desirability of partnering with other units of government. We're not the only county that has received these funds, obviously, to implement this initiative. And so since your action in January, we have been in lengthy discussions with other counties around Illinois and our colleagues at the Illinois Housing Development Authority, which you may know is the state's affordable housing finance agency. IDA staff have been very hard at work designing what will be a statewide emergency rental assistance program. And both my office as well as the state's attorney's office have been in lengthy discussions with IDA regarding establishing some sort of partnership for the delivery of rental assistance that will serve your constituents in the fastest, most efficient manner possible. We are very happy this morning to have on hand Kristen Faust, the executive director of IDA. Kristen is here to present to you the plans that she and her agency have been making to stand up what will likely be one of the country's largest rental assistance programs, and to talk with you a little bit about how our county can participate as just one of the partners in this effort. I do want to mention that Kristen has a few of her colleagues with her this morning. I believe Brendan Kiley, Rodrigo Carrillo, and I also believe I saw that Andrew Field is in the call. And we welcome all of you, our colleagues at the state level, to our meeting this morning. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Kristen to give you an overview of what we're branding the 2021 Illinois Rental Payment Program. So with that introduction, Kristen, I'll turn it over to you. And I think, Brendan, you'll be running the PowerPoint for her. So if we can turn control over to those individuals, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, members of the committee, for the opportunity to present this morning. First, let me just do a sound check. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. So as Scott said, I'm Kristen Faust. I'm Executive Director of the Illinois Housing Development Authority. And I have with me today the three staff that Scott identified. We want to talk to you. You can go to the next slide, please. We are the State Housing Authority. Just in case, I always like to give this little advertisement. We finance the creation and preservation of affordable housing throughout Illinois. And we usually generate about 10,000 units of affordable housing a year, about 2/3 of that for home ownership and 1/3 of that for rental. And since our inception, we have actually allocated and administered over $22 billion in state and federal resources for affordable housing. So the next slide, please. And one of those allotments of federal resources is from the bill that Scott just mentioned that was passed in December, is that there was money allocated to the states and to larger counties for rental assistance. And IDA is in the process right now of designing and implementing the Illinois rental payment program using those funds. And the state overall was allocated just over 840 million, but some of that went to the counties, and the rest, over 500 million, will be administered by IDA. We had a tremendous, a very good track record for administering our funds in 2020. It turns out Illinois dedicated a lot of funds, over $300 million to housing assistance in 2020 from the first coronavirus, the relief fund dollars. And we got over $325 million out the door. It turns out we ran one of the largest programs of any state in the country. And so we're building off of that track record and that infrastructure to administer this next rental assistance program, which is even bigger, which is twice as big. And we thought it made sense to reach out as an opportunity for intergovernmental cooperation to talk to other governmental entities that had received these funds to see if it made sense to leverage off of the IDA infrastructure and to work together so that we actually administer your program for you. And actually, yeah, and so that's I want to go over a little bit some of the highlights, but the idea is that we are administering one large statewide program guided by the same kind of guided by Department of Treasury, just like the program you were talking about a few minutes ago is, and the FAQs that they've issued. And our program is expected to launch later this spring. So next slide, please. I'll just take you through some details. So we are proposing that the rental assistance will cover up to 15 months. So up to 12 months of rent arrearage and 3 months of prospective rent. The coverage period could go back to May of 2020 and would go forward through July of 2021. We have a maximum grant amount of up to $20,000, but we will be paying based on the actual amount that's needed. And the assistance will be paid to landlords as it was with our last program, although there will be a small channel, an exception channel, so to speak, for if a tenant has an unresponsive landlord. The program, we expect the program will be designed for landlords to start the application and tenants to finish. All of the rental applications require both parties typically to submit information to receive the funds. And our experience last year, and also talking with other governmental entities around the state and country, indicates that a landlord started application actually gives us a higher chance of success. We can come back to that, but we expect the portal to open no later than May 1st. And then we expect that application window to be open 3 weeks. Once it opens, at least I would say 3 weeks. And then we would begin processing the payouts. And this program, per the law, ends in December. Next slide, please. So just a couple of highlights. We mentioned that the landlords would apply for the assistance, and then the information would be confirmed by the tenant. We use an online portal, and landlords and tenants are kept up to date in terms of if the application has been submitted or if information is needed. It's done by email. We do work with we do provide some technical assistance and work with community groups who can help those applicants who may not be may need assistance with the emails. And the program will be administered per the federal guidelines, that it's for households at 80% or below of median income, with a prioritization of those at 50% or below of AMI or currently unemployed. And as I mentioned, because there are instances of landlords that are either uncooperative or maybe somehow didn't know to apply, we will have as a secondary option after the major application period opens and closes, the opportunity for a tenant started application. Next slide, please. So we have been working, as Scott said, and talking for several months now. We've been designing this program and have proposed an intergovernmental agreement. And a couple of key highlights I just wanted to say about it, and then I'm happy to answer questions. So the idea is that we're running a program, so piggyback off of us, let's work together. And what we would do is, if your funds would come to IDA, we would agree to fund all of your approved applications from Kane County up to the amount of your funding. Actually, and so the intergovernmental agreement talks about that. We agreed to work on a strong marketing and outreach effort with your county. And we also agreed to prepare timely reports for the county so that they can deliver those to the Department of Treasury. We are charging an 8% admin fee, although 10% is allowed. And the overall vision is that overall, $840 million of rental assistance has been sent to Illinois. We want to use up every dollar. We think the need is there. And there's actually in the law a incentive that if you don't have at least 65% of your funds dispersed by September 30th, Treasury can come in and sweep those funds and give it to another entity. Our goal in Illinois is to have, we're trying to have well over 70% dispersed by September 30th. Just in case there's some other states who don't spend all their money, and we're ready to take in those funds. But also the counties are agreeing that that we will ascertain after the application is closed and see if all funding, all applications have come in. We've approved all say applications from Kane County. We approved those applications. We've agreed to fund those applications. And let's say it gets us to 14 million instead of 15.7. This is what you have, that you would agree at that point to contribute your excess funds into a broader pool that then IDA could continue to disperse through the rest of the state. I also want to tell you that the inverse is true, which is that if more than $15.7 million of applications come in from Kane County, we would expect that pool that we are administering would be used to fund those excess applications. So the idea is that individual counties are able to address the needs of their renters, and that also we're putting our best foot forward for the whole state of Illinois and making sure that we keep all the funds because we believe they'll be needed that have been dispersed to us. And with that, I will stop, and I'm sure there's a number of questions, but I appreciate the opportunity to present this opportunity.
Thank you, Mrs. Foss. Mr. Shepro?
Yes, this is a question maybe for both Scott and our guest. Is the 10%, is that the amount that's allowed for administrative expenses?
That's correct. The statute provides that we must spend a minimum of 90% of our award to provide direct assistance to eligible households.
So if we had additional expenses here, that would come out of the 2% that would be left after Ida's administrative fee, is that?
That is correct. So we're expecting that Kane County will retain $315,630.90 for administration and marketing.
Thank you. And a follow-up quickly. At one point, I know it was contemplated that the collar counties would potentially all be part of the intergovernmental agreement to help possibly create the pool that Director was talking about.
Yes, that's correct. At this point, I can report to you that we're one of 3 collar counties that intend to participate in this joint venture. DuPage and Will are the 2 counties.
Thank you.
Ms. Molina?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So my question would be related to the marketing outreach. For Kane County, is the marketing outreach budget out of our 2%, or does Ida have a larger marketing outreach program already set in place, and that's part of the 8% of our administration fee?
I think the answer is both. Obviously, Ida is standing up a very large-scale program and is going to be leading on the branding and publicity elements. Our intention, without any specificity at this point, is to really do our best to get the word out locally, make sure that our counterparts in your 30 municipalities are aware of this program, and as well as working with the network of nonprofit agencies that we think are best positioned to refer clientele into this program when it's launched.
It's in your mailbox.
And Scott, just to piggyback on that, have we identified our nonprofits here in Kane County? And could you give us kind of an overview of who we've identified that will be assisting us?
Yes, we've got a couple of agencies that are certified by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as housing counseling agencies. We certainly intend to work with those folks. I think later on your agenda, one of those 2 agencies is here to talk with you, and that's the Neighbor Project in Aurora, our largest community. We also have Consumer Credit Counseling Services in Elgin. Just outside our border, we have Prairie State Legal Services. They used to be located in St. Charles. Now they're located in West Chicago, just slightly outside of our jurisdiction, and we work closely with them. We also work very closely with a network of agencies that basically serve the homeless population, and they are very well positioned to field inquiries from folks that are at risk of becoming homeless. This program, as you can well imagine, helping somebody get caught up in their rent and staying current can basically prevent those households from turning into a swell in homelessness in our community. So we'll work very closely with our network of continuum of care agencies as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Seppi?
Thank you. Last year there was.
Mike, please.
Is your mic on?
She can't hear you. That's better now. Sorry. Last year there was an IDPH program that I believe you administered where the reimbursement amount was set at $5,000 per applicant. Is that correct?
Yeah, is that question for me? Yes. So last year our program was fixed at 5,000, but this year it's going to be customized to the amount needed.
So that would depend upon the applicant as to how it's being administered. It's not up to Kane County to determine what the amount should be?
It's actually it's dependent on the information that both the landlord and tenant submit. And the idea is that we are only paying for actual missed rent. And then we do have a maximum amount of, we won't go higher than $20,000 to one landlord.
Okay. And one of the comments that came back to me about the administration of the program last year is once you applied, it was extremely difficult to find out where you stood. And until you either got accepted or rejected, you really didn't find out what your status was. Is there going to be any improvement to that?
Yes, I think yes, there is. And we heard that too. And so we are designing a more frequent communication system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, clarification. I heard you just say $20,000 maximum per landlord. What if that landlord has several buildings? And is it per building or is it per person?
Great question. I should be more specific. Per landlord, per unit. So no one apartment or you could be reimbursed more than $20,000.
Oh, thank you for that.
I had the same question. I was thinking, well, if you own an apartment
So
building,
did
this
I.
isn't going to work well. Okay, excellent. Any other questions?
Dates, please.
Bates, go ahead.
So you talked about no later than May 1st will be the window for applications. How will our constituents know when that window starts?
So we plan to launch a marketing campaign within the next couple of weeks. And at that point in time, information hopefully will be disseminated many, many, many different ways. And there will be a huge push to notify all landlords about this program and about the documentation they need to start gathering to apply, as well as informing tenants that, hey, this program is going to be opening. Get your paperwork together too, of course. But those will be the kind of messages that are put forward into the marketing campaign. So you should expect to see that launch in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Can you give me a specific place where they should look? Ooh,
so right now it would be the IDA website.
IDHA website will be the first place to find out.
IHDA.org.
Oops,
and Rodrigo, is there DA.org? Is there an additional?
Yeah, so that's the website that will be posting updated information. And then also community partner agencies will know and will have informational webinars throughout the state about the program.
Okay, I want to be able to tell my constituents where to go. So IHDA.org will have the first posting. Okay, may I ask another question, please? Who will be approving the applications? It sounded like you said after we approve the applications, you will make it happen, or do you approve the applications?
I may have misspoke there. So that basically the application review process, the entire process will be handled by IDA. So applicants say they go to Kane County website, that nice page that I saw earlier up, and it says rental assistance, and they would click there, and then that would take them immediately to our website and our application. And at that point on, we would be administering the program.
And approving.
And approving. And yes, absolutely.
May I ask one more question, Mr.
Sure, Ms.
Chairman?
Bates.
If you do the math, $5 million, $15 million divided by 20,000 is not going to go very far. Even dividing it by 5,000 was only a small fraction of our need. Is it better to keep it at 5,000 than to go up to 20,000? Can we tell you what we want to do?
I think I can answer that.
Okay, go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just emphasize to the board members that one of the key elements of this design is that we're trying to simplify the message that goes out to the applicant community, whether it be landlords or tenants. So one of the key benefits of the proposal that we have for you today is that we are a participant in a larger program that has uniform guidelines, uniform standards, uniform levels of assistance. This will help to prevent confusion among the applicant community. And also to Ms. Faust's point, the $15 million or thereabouts that you're focused on is not the entire picture. Your constituents will have access to both the funds that we're talking about this morning, the 15-something million dollars that are currently in your bank account, but they will also have access to the over $500 million that the Illinois Housing Development Authority is charged with administering in all 102 counties across the state of Illinois. So the benefit to your constituents under this approach is that they have a seamless access to dollars, regardless of where they come from. Keep in mind, your constituents don't care where the money comes from. It's all US currency, it's all equal value, level of assistance. And so we think that this kind of partnership is going to provide a smoother experience for the applicant pool.
And I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful for this. Thank you. Done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Any other questions, Madam Chair?
I have one question. We have found out that many of our applicants just trying to sign up for the vaccine is problematic because of lack of Wi-Fi access or just computer access. So if this is going to be online primarily, is there going to be outreach as well so that our applicants, if necessary, can fill it out via paper or via phone and call in and to give that information in that manner as well? Or is it only going to be on computer?
I believe IDA's intention is to have everything online, correct, Kristen?
That is correct, but we will have technical assistance available for people that need help. And I don't know, Rodrigo, if you want to add anything to that. One of the interesting things that happened last year was that over 70% of our applications were done on mobile phone. And so it's both computer and mobile phone, but we did see, and we are designing the application this year to be, easily used on the mobile phone as well as a regular computer. But there will be assistance for people that don't, like if you don't have an email account or something like that, we have a way to help you get that set up.
And I also want to add that my agency is located in downtown Batavia, and we are co-located with the Comprehensive One-Stop Center for our county. At that one-stop center, we do have banks of computers that are available for members of the public to utilize. We have full technology, ability to scan, upload. Any residents that would like not only the access to technology, but frankly also access to advice and assistance from our staff are certainly free to make an appointment to visit our facility and apply here using our resources.
Thank you very much. That was a great answer.
Mr. Chairman, Sturgis here.
Sturgis, go ahead.
And first off, I want to apologize. I've not reviewed the application or the information on the housing site, although I have it pulled up in front of me now. I'm just going off of rumors that I've heard throughout the business community. Is there a limit per individual renter that apartment owners should be aware of?
There's a $20,000 proposed cap. Not per individual, it's per unit, so per household.
Okay, so there's not a per person or per tenant, if you will.
Per household.
Got it. Okay. And then the second question, am I to understand in this, and maybe I misunderstood, this can be initiated from either the building owner or the tenant?
No, the key program will be initiated by the landlord, by the building owner. It will be initiated through the landlord, through the housing provider, as we call them.
Okay.
And then it's substantiated by the tenant. The federal law requires that we have a pathway in case there was an uncooperative landlord. And so I just wanted to assure everybody that we will create that alternative pathway, but it's a secondary kind of exception pathway. The main
Okay.
program is the landlords will initiate and tenants confirm.
Okay, I think on behalf of the landlords that have reached out to me, that's great news. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I want to thank you, Ms. Foss, for being here with us today. I know your organization has been doing a lot of work trying to put this together. And I know we all look forward, and especially our residents look forward to when it opens up and start to see some of that assistance coming through. Did you have anything else that you would like to leave us with today, or would that conclude your presentation?
That concludes the presentation, and just thank you. And we look forward to helping serve the residents of Kane County.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Bye-bye.
Mr. Shepro.
Are there any deadlines in getting on board with this, given that there's two other counties that are potentially participating?
I wouldn't say there's a regulatory deadline, but there's a practical deadline.
Yeah.
Which is to say that our constituents are in need of assistance now. And so the other two counties that we're engaged with, Will and DuPage, all expect to reach a conclusion next week. And I believe that we're probably a matter of days before we can enter into a formal agreement with the Illinois Housing Development Authority and move our attention toward action steps to launch this program.
Is there actually an agreement drafted? It just wasn't included in our packet?
Yes, there is a draft agreement. I believe the state's attorney's office may have shared that with the members of the committee, perhaps through your county issued email address. And it's still under development. We're still making minor tweaks. The bureaucrats like myself are, tidying up the words and the language. We had a meeting yesterday to do just that.
And to that end, we have a resolution authorizing the execution of the IGA, and we're ready to go on that for today's vote. Correct, Scott?
That is correct. So included in your packet is a resolution that effectively authorizes Chairman Pirog to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Housing Development Authority to provide $15,781,544.80 from your award amount. That will leave $315,630.90 in our possession for our use to promote and manage this program moving forward. We are still a grantee as far as the federal government is concerned. Kane County is fully liable for these dollars. We are a fiduciary and we take that responsibility seriously. This program will undergo a significant audit next spring as part of your comprehensive audit as a county. But we are asking this morning that you forward this resolution to the full board next Tuesday.
I see Madam Chair's pen is ready to sign this document. She's ready to go. So with that in mind, can I get a motion in a second to Mr. Shepro moves, Mr. Frost seconds? Are there any other questions or comments on this IGA resolution? Okay, seeing and hearing none, clerk, could you please call the roll?
Frost,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Shepro,
Shepro, yes.
Surges,
Surges, yes.
passes.
Okay. All right, so next, in other business, we have a presentation with Mr. Kevin Malone of the Kane County Foreclosure Mediation Program. Now, I had originally spoke with Mr. Malone about, is there a way that we could help his program through this grant money that we're receiving? And the answer is unfortunately no, but I did want him to present today to just kind of explain to everyone what his program is doing with the county. It is very closely related to the topic at hand of rental assistance, and looking forward to when we assume we will receive more coronavirus relief fund money. This is something that I would like us to at least seriously consider helping out and to some degree at that time. So with that, Mr. Malone, could you take over the microphone? I know you said you don't need to share your screen or anything, so you can just talk us through it.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you all for inviting me. I also spoke with Mr. Guzman at the Neighbor Project. He shared some points with me. He's not going to be able to make it today. He asked that I speak reading off of his bullet points. So that next item with the Neighbor Project, I'm going to flow right into that after
Excellent.
my brief presentation, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, my name is Kevin Malone. I am over here at the 3rd Street Courthouse. I currently administer the foreclosure mediation program as well as a child abuse and neglect mediation program. I work for Resolution Systems Institute. We are a nonprofit based out of Chicago. Our expertise is in ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution Design. We monitor and evaluate systems as well as design and implement them, primarily in the state of Illinois, but we do evaluations across the country. I'm going to briefly run through the genesis of the program. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we aim to do, and then I'm going to talk briefly about what support the county and the CARES Act Allocation Committee might be able to help with us if future funds do become available. First, the program, we've been working on the program now since June of 2020. The court administrators and the judges approached me understanding that this eviction crisis would hit soon. They wanted something in place when the moratoria lifted and the eviction cases began to get filed. They wanted to make sure that Kane County was well positioned for the coming crisis. During that time, we researched models from across the country on eviction mediation programs. There are many, and we found several that we thought could be adapted to the realities of COVID-19, meaning that they could be adapted to a virtual setting, as well as transition to an in-person setting if and when we get there, which hopefully will be soon, given the way things are going. The model we have landed on helps both landlords and tenants and the judiciary in 3 primary ways. First, our program is going to provide legal aid or legal information to both parties, both landlords and tenants. One challenge in eviction cases is you have a population entering into the court system who may or may not be fully aware of court procedure. This can slow things down. This can make people forfeit rights that maybe they wouldn't otherwise, or lose out on resolutions that could be beneficial to all parties. This ultimately costs landlords money in litigation costs. It can lead to tenants who lose their homes or worse if they don't know how to move forward. And it hurts the taxpayers, and that all those costs are in some ways borne by the taxpayers and the property values and in costs to the court. We are partnering with Prairie State Legal Services and an organization known as the Pro Bono Network of attorneys who offer their services to staff a virtual help desk. This help desk will answer simple questions that are not legal advice, but rather legal information. That's an important distinction in the legal field, and can help orient the parties in such a way that they can efficiently and effectively move through the judicial system. We are also working with the NIU Law School and Prairie State Legal also to provide full representation to parties that meet the criteria, that have some larger issue, that need help. And finally, we are developing a series of videos that folks who are in the waiting room of the courthouse, virtual waiting room, can watch while they wait. That will explain some of the simpler aspects of the legal process, the mediation process, which I'll talk about here in a moment, and the financial aid part, which you just had a wonderful presentation on, and that we are planning to integrate into, as well as have some other options. That's the first way we're going to help the citizens of Kane County, the legal information. The second way we're going to help is going to be through financial assistance. This is going to be in direct financial assistance through the exact program that you just heard a presentation on. We do not want Kane County residents to miss out on their share of these federal funds. This will meet all the needs of both the tenants who owe back rent, landlords who frankly want dollar bills, right? As well as the court. Many of these cases we believe can settle without going before the judge or with minimal court contact if we can simply get a check into the hands of the landlord. This is where our partnership with the Neighbor Project becomes so important. The Neighbor Project has applied for a grant through IHDA to aid with the intake and the completion of these rental assistance applications. There was a question, I believe it was from Chairwoman Pirog, on how folks without computer access might apply for those funds. The Neighbor Project has applied for a grant through the state of Illinois for money to help with intake, specifically to have computers and staff and training necessary to ensure that that intake process can be completed at the Neighbor Project's location. The Neighbor Project has also secured independent funding. They are out fundraising, gathering dollars to pay back rent. This is independent of the state and the federal efforts. This is money that a generous donor has given them and that they're leveraging to raise more funds. And these are going to be made available to litigants in our mediation program, in the eviction relief mediation program we're developing, as well as those who just walk in the door. They don't have to have a filing to access these, but they will be made available to this group of tenants and landlords facing eviction. Finally, IHDA has indicated that a portion of the federal relief funds for eviction relief will be set aside specifically for mediation programs. So of that, I believe it's $840 million or and some change, I'm sure, that the state of Illinois has received to pay back rent. A portion of that will only be accessible through court-related mediation programs. This pot of money is going to be available to any circuit and any county that develops a mediation program such as ours. But of course, Kane County we're ahead of the ball. I can tell you from working with colleagues around the state that we are far ahead of pretty much anyone else. We'll have a great opportunity to access these funds and help tenants and landlords in Kane County. That's the second way we're going to help, the financial resources. There's another component that I should mention momentarily as well. The Neighbor Project will also be providing financial counseling to tenants, getting them out of the back due rent scenario is great, but we also want to make sure we're putting them on a firm footing moving forward so that hopefully we can avoid this type of situation again through a financial counseling component for those tenants who are interested in engaging in that. Again, that's the second way we're going to help. The third way we are going to help is through mediation. Mediation, simply put, is facilitated negotiation. This is where the landlord and the tenant will get an opportunity to sit down with a trained third-party neutral who will help them negotiate, figure out what needs figuring out to resolve the case. We believe the majority of cases will be resolved simply through the rent relief funds. However, in some instances, there may be other issues that need to be resolved. First, perhaps rent relief will not resolve the back payment. Maybe the tenant doesn't qualify, maybe the landlord isn't interested, whatever the case may be. In those instances, we can negotiate graceful exits. What date will the tenant move out? What will the condition will the property be in? This helps save time, money. There's less risk of property being damaged in a graceful exit than in a forced eviction. All of this helps the citizens of Kane County. In instances where there is money on the table, perhaps we can negotiate either reduced rent in the future, rent forgiveness where appropriate, perhaps a payment plan to cover some of the, maybe you can't get the lump sum today, but we can come up with a plan moving forward. There's a lot of possibilities, and really the sky's the limit in the mediation. A lot can be done to help resolve these matters and make for a more stable, friendly environment for all parties involved. I'll pause here for a moment for questions. I'm going to jump into the status of our program, where we are in its development and rollout here in just a moment, but I did want to give an opportunity for any questions on what we aim to do at this point.
Does anyone have any questions here online. I think it's pretty clear to see the connection with this program to what the goals of the rental assistance grant are.
I have a comment, but maybe I'll hold it till.
Okay, sure, yeah, wait until after.
Now, one of the.
Hold on, Kevin, Madam Chair.
Oh, hi. Since we're going to have a significant amount of grants that'll be going out with IDA, I'd like to pause on just the comment made about financial planning. If that is going to be available as a component with IDA for our other tenants who are potentially compromised because of the effects of the pandemic. Because that to me is critical for people not to get into this situation again if controlled debt so that they can manage their income effectively.
Absolutely, and in working with our program partners, one thing we realized pretty early on, the legal side of it is really a symptom. It's not the cause of either foreclosure or eviction, and really in a lot of instances, the legal side is a symptom. In developing our program, we recognized that early on, and that's why the Neighbor Project is such an important part in our process. If we can set folks up for success in the future, we know we can save costs and we can save heartache, and we don't have to get the sheriff involved with an eviction or the judge involved with a judgment. I'm really inspired by the Neighbor Project's work and all our program partners, frankly, in this holistic approach to what could be viewed as a merely judicial matter. So absolutely right. That's a great comment. Thank you, Chair.
Actually, I do have a question.
Mr. Shepro, go ahead.
Yeah. Right now, as I understand it, the mediation program is for foreclosures, mortgage foreclosures. But I also understand that this week the judges are voting on a program that would essentially do something very similar for rental forcible entry and detainer cases, which we know when the moratorium expires, there's going to be a huge rush to the courthouse or with those. Is that going to be tied in together? Something you may be involved with on the rental level as well as the mortgage foreclosure level?
Yeah, that's a great segue. Thank you very much. That is my program that they're voting on. And that leads us into the updates on sort of where the program stands. In order for a program such as this to exist, the circuit judges need to vote on a local rule in order to give it the force of the court. And we have drafted the rule and submitted it to the circuit judges, and they are voting on it now. It is my understanding that they are to all have voted by Friday. I could never hazard a guess on what judges may or may not do, though it appears that the circuits are favorable. The circuit judges are favorable to this program. We have spent time with our program partners, and of course, Judge Hall and Judge Bowles have been supporting this program from the get-go. So I have very high hopes that our rule will be passed as written. And that is the program that we're working on here, is that judicial eviction relief program. That's sort of the first update, is that our rule will pass by Friday. I hope, I should say, I hope it will pass by Friday. Once that rule is passed, we are a go. The program is in place and we can begin putting the pieces in order on where they need to be. We are seeking funding from multiple sources for this program, and I'll give you a brief update on the funding component. Our first funding source is the American Arbitration Association. We reached out to them before the second CARES Act even passed in an effort to secure funding for a program such as this. Kane County and RSI were dedicated to this program before we knew there would be funding from any government entity, so we are seeking funding from a wide range of sources. The American Arbitration Association has approved our $153,000 grant. That's an 18-month grant, so it gives us some longevity here. It gives us a nice time period to work with. This allows us to hire a program coordinator. We put our job posting up on Friday. We've had a few applicants already. and we hope to hire that position as soon as we can. The program coordinator will be the individual who is here full-time, making sure the lights are on, making sure that everything is working as it needs to be. This also allows us to begin some of the administrative costs, case management system, odds and ends, getting our Zoom licenses, all that in place. The second source of funding we hope to secure is through the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois is putting aside some funding for what they're calling early intervention eviction programs. And we feel that we have a good shot at getting this money, and the AOIC, the Illinois Supreme Court's administrative office, is working hard on opening up that grant opportunity. The RFP, I believe, went live today and is due on Friday. We have a 3-day turnaround on that, which is incredibly fast. So hopefully we'll have some word on that second source of funding, that opportunity. The last update I'll give you then is our future needs. This funding we do not anticipate will cover the entire cost of the program. We will need to pay mediators, we'll need to train mediators, we will need to have various administrative costs throughout. I hope I can approach the CARES Act Allocation Committee once we're down the line a little bit, and perhaps ask for some funding to help support this program, though I of course understand we don't know at this point. With all that said, we should be ready to launch. Our goal is to launch by April 1st, which is very ambitious and very soon. We are unsure if the moratorium will be lifted at that point. There may be very few evictions at that point to work with, though that gives us a period to ramp up, work out some of the difficulties that may arise. But that's the long and short of our program, what we're planning to do. Again, we are a partnership of the 16th Judicial Circuit, through Judge Hall, Judge Bowles, and Judge Dalton in particular have been working with us very closely, as well as Andrea and Doug, and then the Neighbor Project, Prairie State, and others. And with that, I'll pause for some questions.
All right, does
Bates,
anyone have any
please.
questions? Ms. Bates, go ahead.
I think I got a little confused. So right now you're only doing foreclosures, but soon you hope to be doing this wonderful renters helping program?
Yeah, so just to be extra clear, the foreclosure program is a completely separate, independent, totally different program. It is not directly related to this eviction effort we're working on. I happen to be the administrator of the foreclosure program. That is why the court approached me to help with the eviction program. But it is a separate, unique program. In fact, due to funding reasons, we can't use funds for the foreclosure side on the eviction side. We can't use funds from the eviction side on the foreclosure side. The foreclosure program has been up and running, since January 1st of 2014. I've been running it since then. And we've been working with the Neighbor Project as well as Consumer Credit Counseling up in the Elgin area. That program's still going. There's very few foreclosures at the moment, though if any of you have constituents who are facing foreclosure, they should call my office immediately, and we can begin that process.
Mr. Shepro.
Thank you.
I just would comment as somebody that's represented both landlords and tenants in the system that even before the advent of COVID, I think that for both parties, the process is so enormously frustrating and time consuming, as Mr. Malone alluded to, that I just think this has to be a good program. The landlords are going crazy because they can't get rid of tenants that won't pay, and the tenants don't have any certitude. I know in the foreclosure program, it's been important that our judiciary sort of forces people to come to the table. That early on was a problem because you had a lot of out-of-state banks that had taken over mortgages and didn't feel any particular need to communicate with people locally. And our judges, I think almost uniformly, made clear that that wasn't going to be an acceptable response. So I think this is a very important program, not just in terms of the people who are affected directly by it, but having our judiciary system, get back ramped up in a meaningful way.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I of course wholeheartedly agree. I very strongly believe in mediation. While we were doing our research for this program, eviction mediation programs have existed across the country in various jurisdictions in various forms. And on the whole, they're very successful. Eviction and tenant landlord disputes are very ripe for third-party intervention that is not authoritative, which is not judicial in nature. Whether this program survives the COVID period or not is a decision that would be made by the county and the circuits, though we have designed it in such a way that if the circuit chooses, it can continue. We wanted to make it as flexible and useful as possible, recognizing that the initial wave of evictions is going to look very different from the second, third, fourth wave of evictions. It's a unique, complex and complicated issue for sure.
All right, any other questions or comments for Mr. Malone? All right, thank you, Mr. Malone, for being here. I'm sorry we're not able to help you with any assistance at this time, but again, I think it's still, what you're doing is still relevant to the main topic of today's meeting, and we look forward to having you back again, assuming there will be a reason.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
All right, that's it for today. We don't have a need for executive session. I'll save any other comments that I have for next time. I think, Mr. Kenyon, you wanted to make a
We shut it
motion.
off and get on the trail.
Thank you all for your patience. A second by Mr. Shepro.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let's get out of here.